My name is Cameron McCoy. I am doing my topic on, when it loads, it'll be the future of nonprofits and sustainable curriculum. So I've been researching this actually since 2012. I'm very passionate about it, and I find it very interesting for myself. And really, it's all about learning about nonprofits and how students are involved in them and how they get involved in curriculum based on it. So where did this interest start? It started back in 2012. I was taking a course with Leo Wong, one of my professors. It was an elective course. It was called Nonprofit Management. I took it on a whim. I was kind of interested in it. I liked volunteering, and I thought this was a course that taught you to be a super volunteer. Little did I know, I was entering into a course that was teaching me about a $100 billion industry that most students fail to see when they come to school. And it really got me interested in the nonprofit sector. I began to get more involved in my school. I got involved in an ACTIS program, and then I went on to run for president of our student association because I became so passionate about nonprofits. But what I really became passionate about was why students don't know enough about nonprofits. And it really led me to an independent study with my prof, asking the question, why are nonprofit programs not being more utilized in Canada? So when I finished my first year course, or my first elective with Leo, and I learned that there was no more courses on nonprofits at McEwen, I asked why. And I learned that there was a program at McEwen University called Executive Leadership in the Nonprofit Sector that was closed down in 2011 due to low enrollment. And I really had a question for why would it be closed down when this is such a huge industry? And I want to examine what other programs across the country are doing to stop closures of programs, and what I could do to learn more about how to bring back a program like this. So to go through what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about my research in 2012 and in 2013. So in 2012, it was focused on 8 different schools across the country, their nonprofit programs, the way it worked, the way they were run, and if they were experiencing success or failure. And I really want to guide whether our program was kind of the outlier or if it was the norm as far as failure goes. The second part was focused on courses that talked about nonprofits and sustainability. Why sustainability? It seems a little bit more of an outlier. It was all about the umbrella of that social responsibility. And I felt that it really connected in with an industry that people weren't talking about in class. A lot of people thought they knew about it, but I didn't really believe that people knew what sustainability meant or it was being taught. So I looked at a number of articles about why they were failing, why they're doing well, and then I also talked to our students at McEwen. So to start off, it was my first research project. I was very interested in nonprofits, and I went to a number of different schools, and I asked these 8 simple questions. And what I was trying to do was get a picture of what were nonprofit programs doing across the country, how are they different, how are they unique, were they working well, what was working well about them. It was a very interesting experience for myself, talking to programs who really had never been approached by other people in regards to how they were operated. Some big themes came out of it. One was these programs are all extremely different. There's no guide for one program across the country. Nothing is the norm. The other thing I noticed was programs don't know why they're succeeding or why they're failing. They could give me no real ideas for why their program was better than someone else's, why they experienced success, why they experienced the failure that many of them were experiencing. What I did kind of learn was that programs that had faculty champions, people who were passionate about the subject, were the ones that were succeeding. It was the schools that pushed nonprofits. Those were the schools that were seeing success. The schools who had a person who had about 5 other programs alongside nonprofits were the ones who experienced failure. No one was passionate about the topic, and in turn, their students weren't either. An example was at the University of Windsor. They had a nonprofit program, and their students were very passionate about it. They're getting involved, and it's because alumni coming out of that program were doing great things, and students saw it, they wanted to get involved, they had a passion for it, and it created a great circle to get more students involved over the years. But in addition to this, what I found very interesting was I talked to a school in BC, BCIT, and they had a nonprofit management program. And I wanted to learn about how they were doing, and they were doing okay. They had 2 students graduate the year before in 2011, and they felt that that was okay because it was an open studies course. But then the program lead showed me another course that they had, and it was a management program for fundraising. And she showed me how the curriculum lined up perfectly except for one course. It was a very interesting moment for me to realize that students who were taking 2 different programs, one program only had one course that was different, the fundraising program graduated over 100 students the last year, but the nonprofit program was only graduating 2. So it kind of brought me to realize, why is one program doing well? Why is another program not doing well? So I went to research. This is part B in 2012, sorry, and 2013 to an extent. I researched programs that are focused on nonprofits and sustainability. What I learned so quickly was that nonprofit programs at the MBA level were doing very well. So between 2006 and 1998, the program amount of courses that were offered for nonprofits in an MBA program increased 5-fold. In addition to that, sustainability programs increased by 47.7%. Students at this high level were becoming interested, but at the same time, there was no change in post-secondary undergraduate level. So students weren't learning about it at the undergrad level, and it was very noticeable. The other thing that was noticed was that there's a high degree of businesses wanting to become more sustainable. I looked at an Australian study, and it said 94% of companies are wanting to become more sustainable because they know it's important, but only 11% knew how to do it or had plans in place. So this knowledge gap was heavily identified. So I wanted to know, why are there not more programs out there? So I looked at their success and failure. The key thing that came out of success and failure was that there's a lack of consistency. Every program is very unique. So in Australia, they said they had a lot of sustainability programs, lots of them are failing, because each of them offered different skills when you got out, different curriculum. They did not have a view of students of being valid. So what I realized from this was, similar to our non-profit programs in Canada, when students don't view it as an important program because there's a lack of consistency from school to school, they're not going to get involved or take it as a serious program. No worries. Lastly was demand for nonprofit and sustainability programs. It showed that there's a high amount of demand across Canada. When it came to nonprofit programs, they're a $100 billion industry, but at the same time, there's no real programs focused on it. We only have one MBA program out of Carleton focused on nonprofits, but it's not being heavily utilized. So I want to talk to students, and I'm going to briefly go over this. Students know that sustainability means recycling, and they know that nonprofits means volunteering. Beyond that, they don't think very much about them. They don't believe nonprofit is a $100 billion industry. They don't believe sustainability is the economy of the future. What they have is a very limited knowledge that they believe is the truth. So students had a lot of ideas. They said they wouldn't take a course in it because it's not important. It's not going to give them a career. What it's going to give them is a nice feeling, and a lot of them said, we'd love to take a course because I think recycling is great. But they did not want to take a course because it was going to get them a job. So that gap was heavily identified. Same thing in the student survey. Students realized that it's a growing industry to a small extent for only the program students who've taken a nonprofit course. What they didn't realize was that for the majority of students, it was a career option. So most students said, yeah, I would take it as an elective, maybe, because I think it's fun to volunteer. Very similar to what I thought in my first year of university when I was taking my nonprofit course. So what's the conclusion? The reality is we can't introduce a nonprofit program at McEwen until we teach students why it's important to take a course. That needs to come from those early levels. Students identified that it should be brought in very early on. If you're going to teach us about sustainability and nonprofits, teach us in our first year courses. They don't believe that a course on its own would survive. When you began to tell them why these courses were important, they began to realize that there's this entire industry that they've never heard of, that they never were taught about in high school, that they never had these ideas coming into university. So before we provide options, we have to teach students about why it's important to take them. And the last point I'll leave you with was, one of the studies for the schools that do best with nonprofit and sustainability programs come from schools that have it in their pillars. So in their mission and vision, they talk about sustainability, why it's important, why nonprofits are important. Those schools are the ones that have the best programs. So a school like McCoy University, who is pushing forward sustainability in their pillars, community in their pillars, has a much greater chance now to introduce a course like this or programming like this because it's one of their vision points. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll take any questions now.